Hello, it's May 4th, 2013, and I decided I would do a video today just to soldiers and veterans, with one exception I'm going to make at the start. But you know, I did a video a while back on a message to SF members, and boy, that created a firestorm. So I figured, you know, nothing better than going into the thick of the fight, right? Sometimes that's necessary. So I've decided to make that decision and talk to you soldiers and veterans today. Before I do that, however, I did a video about, I don't know, it's been over a year ago now, maybe a little longer. It was called Divide the Word, and actually it was in two parts. It was Divide the Word 1 and Divide the Word 2. And I would encourage you to go back and look at that. And you know, I bring spiritual things into my discussions. We have to, because we're not just physical human beings. We're spiritual men and women as well. And so I made that video, and I'd like you to see it if you haven't. And I want you to pay attention to the fact that I call out the elite of the world, the ones that we associate with the New World Order, the banksters, the real power brokers. I identify them in a way, and I tell them that they need to repent of their evil doings. I'm going to do that again right now, okay? With the information I put out on the Bohemian Grove, now that you people that have the courage to look and listen to some of the things that folks like I talk about, you'll understand that there is in fact a very wicked, evil, spiritual, religious force that's controlling things. Okay? And they know exactly who they worship and why they do it. And you soldiers and vets, you need to understand this too. I don't have any problem with people in their religion. They can worship whatever they want. But when they put those things into practice to destroy the lives of others, as they do in front of the owl Molech at the Bohemian Grove, and then agree to the burning in effigy of a child so that they can cast away any responsibility for doing wrong in their minds, that's evil. And then go out in the world and actually do it. And make no mistake about it, they do go out in the world and do it. Okay, and you soldiers and vets, if you've kept your eyes open at all, you'll know that that's what's happening. Not everywhere, okay? Not everywhere. But in a lot of instances. So, to those elites, and you know who you are, and I've called you out once before, and all of the people who work for you knowingly, not so much unknowingly, because those folks may not realize it. I'll just ask all of them to look at the fruits of the labors, whether it's good or bad. And really, not just whether it's good for America, but whether it's the right thing to do. Okay? But to you elites, I'm going to say real quick, you need to repent. You need to stop this. And that pit you're digging for others, you're going to fall in. And I don't really care about you anymore. You know, I'm not that good. But you need to stop this, and you need to back off. And those in your circles that are considering maybe doing that need to do it very, very fast. All right. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Divide the Word 1 and 2. Okay, for those of you who wonder what in the world I'm talking about. Okay, I think what I'll do is I'm going to start off with something I mentioned a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but a few videos back. I mentioned a young patriot, about the age of most of you younger soldiers, at least when you started off, back in the Revolutionary War. And, you know, there were a lot of them. Back in those days, they had them pretty young. But there's one who was 21 years old. And he was a soldier in the Continental Army. And he was asked to go on an intelligence gathering mission to New York, I believe. And that's what he did. That was kind of the stronghold of the British Navy at the time, and the Army, of course. Well, during his attempts to gather this information, he was captured by the British. 21 years old. When they put the noose around his neck, this is what he said. And some of you may remember this from your history. I regret, but that I have but one life to lose for my country. Well, that young man was Nathan Hale. And how many other young men, and I know there have been young women too, and that's a tragedy. How many others have also suffered that for freedom, for liberty? And I mean true freedom and liberty. Okay, for the Constitution. There was no Constitution at that time. That didn't show up for several years yet. But they were at the point where they had the Declaration of Independence and, you know, the right of the individual. Okay? And then that finally matured into the Bill of Rights and the Constitution later. How many have lost their lives or been maimed for the principles of liberty and freedom? And I mean really that. You know my feelings, and I'm going to call you brothers in arms, okay? You know my feelings about what our nation has done in the last few years. If you don't know, and if you think that things changed after the Vietnam War, they didn't. You know, McNamara came out and said that it was a lie that we got into Vietnam, the way we did it, and what we were doing there. I'm not asking you to commit, you know, anything that's going to get you in trouble if you're active duty or reserve or whatever. You know, I don't want you to mutiny or anything like that. But I don't believe that our senior superior officers and some NCOs, although I have a lot more faith in the NCOs than I do the officers, I think a lot of them have lost sight of what this is really about. And I know a lot of you are having internal conflicts. When I was doing it, I had internal conflicts. When I was deployed or when I went overseas for something, and I knew that what I was doing was really not for the security. Maybe you don't know that. But I questioned some of the things I saw, whether it was really good. And I had an internal conflict. Follow your gut feeling on that. So where to start? But when you entered the service, you took an oath of office. And now you've heard me talk about this a lot. There's an oath of office for officers and an oath of office for enlisted. And it refers in those to the Constitution of the United States. Chances are you've never read it. I'm sure some of you have. But I want you to read it in its entirety, from start to finish. I want you to sit down on a quiet evening or wherever you can and just read those words and think of Nathan Hale, who is in your position. Start with the Bill of Rights, not with the Constitution itself. You can read the preamble of the Constitution first, that's okay. But before you go any further into the document, because those administrations and operations in the Constitution, which are really designed to cause a balance of powers, okay, are there to actually give protections to the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights is really the core of what everything was that happened in 1776. So read the preamble, then the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, amendments 1 through 10, and then go ahead and read through the rest of the document. Okay? Very important. And then think about your oath of office. You're not taking, when you go in the military, you're not there to serve necessarily the president or the Congress or even your superior officers, because the Constitution is what you swore an oath to. And as long as those people that you are obeying as a military person in the military, as long as what their orders and their agenda fits with the requirements of the Constitution, then you are bound to your oath to do as they ask you to do. But if they do not ask you to do something that's correct, or if they actually tell you to do something that's wrong, yeah, you're in a pickle. But as I've said in so many videos, now is the time to choose. We either stand up for what's right, or we watch everything about liberty and freedom dissolve in front of our eyes, and you'll lose it for yourselves and your children. It's that critical. There are really physical demons running our government right now. Not just in the government itself, but in those things that influence the government. How many of you like Halliburton, Kellogg, Brown, and Root? Not too many of you, I wouldn't think. You see? And those kinds of organizations, what did they do in Iraq? They were feeding the troops slop while they got the steaks. You know? Do you see? Do you see? I know, you didn't do this for a fun ride. You did it because you were willing to make sacrifices. But it's the principle of who's actually controlling this that I want you to understand. Yes, have that feeling of the flag in your heart. Remember Nathan Hale? That is right. Money. Stealing the resources of poor people and destroying their lives. That's not right. Being asked to stand against your countrymen who are seeking their liberties. If you try to prevent them from exercising their liberties, and I don't care what they tell you, oh, it's for the good of the country, we've got terrorists. They'll always present you with an enemy to justify taking the liberties away from those you are supposed to protect. And then there are some things that happen that have been recently, okay? If you've kept your eyes open at all, you know that the reasons that they've taken us to war on so many places, and at so many times, especially in the last 20 years, have been based on lies, subterfuge. Oh, WMD in Iraq, They keep coming up with the same storyline in so many places. Now, you're not really in a position to say yes or no at that point in time, but what you can do, as I've said earlier, is really, hold your superior officers accountable. And if they, they've put into place these whistleblower laws now, where if you try to show corruption in the government, you get in a lot of trouble. That's a risk we have to take. That's what our oath is about, is accepting the consequences of us standing up for what's right. Not just, as I've said before, not just when it's convenient for you to do so, but when it's imperative for you to do so. They issue orders to us, to you, under the most nefarious of circumstances. Remember when WikiLeaks came out with all that information, including the helicopter attack in Iraq there that Bradley Manning exposed? All right? And any of you who are trained and you look at those videos, you can see just as well as I could that was photographic equipment. There were no RPGs, there were no AK-47s. That was a group of civilians, photojournalists out trying to gather story information. And one of the journalists actually, he may have actually been the subject of the hit. I don't know about that, but I do know that those types of things are war crimes. They're wrong. And it takes a big person to be willing to stand up and say, I'm not going to go along with that no matter what happens to me. Because if we don't do that, ladies and gentlemen, our entire system, which is corroding and corrupting from inside to the outside, is going to fall apart like a leper, with no cohesion other than money to hold it together. And money is not a very it doesn't make for coherence, okay? Because eventually it turns to greed, and greed is always destructive. Wow, I sure philosophize a lot. Anyway, with WikiLeaks, all of this information was published in newspapers, in the news media, free access, right? What did they tell you? Do you remember what the military told you? Don't read that stuff, it's classified. No, they can't do that. You see, only their classified documents. Not if it leaks out. If it leaks out, you have every right in the world to see it in the main press. There was another attempt to shut down your First Amendment rights. What surprises me is that superior officers in the military do these things. And I don't care if they're told to do it by their civilian leaders or not. They can say no when it comes down to that. And our leaders are too afraid to. At least you see evidence of this where they haven't done it. Maybe there are times behind closed doors they have. And there are good general officers and others that have done that, and they've suffered the consequences. But we all have to do it at every level, every rank, every MOS. Tell you can't read the paper because it might have classified information in it. That's an unlawful order. It's amazing to me what they've got. That makes me wonder about this cyber warrior stuff. We hear a lot about that. And I'm a baby boomer generation, so computers, I can handle myself, but I can't, in dealing with different things, but I really can't. I can't do the really detailed stuff, the really complicated stuff. But I heard this cyber warrior stuff, and I said, well, exactly how is that going to work? And I found out they have a propaganda war like on YouTube here. I'm engaged in it, obviously. And then there are those that counter me. But I tell you the truth. Okay, I might not have all the facts exactly right, because nobody does. But I'm not here to take away your liberty and your freedom. I'm here that you may have that life of liberty and freedom more abundantly by realizing the enemy that is trying to remove it from you and the rest of us. And there are those on there that engage in encountering me just on that reason, that they want to, be the big shots and get the information and use it in nefarious ways rather than speak the truth. So just remember that they told you couldn't read the newspapers because there might be classified information in there, trying to shut down your First Amendment. Now we have these orders that Christians can't discuss their faith or be engaged in any kind of a public area with discussing it. And if somebody overhears it, I'll bet you they get in trouble. Okay? Another effort to shut this First Amendment free speech down. And they're doing it to you. Remember, the military's always been the social engineering laboratory for the rest of the country. And I'm not saying that that's been a good thing. I talk a lot about that on this channel and what I feel the structure of our society should be. And I can't decide that for everybody, no. But there are obvious things that the military has been used to cook for the rest of society. And this thing with coming on Christians is one of them. If you folks in the military accept this, they're going to go to the next level. So don't let them. You just got to stand up now, even though it's going to be difficult. You got to stand up for that oath. And I know there are a lot of veterans out there that are on the fence on this thing too, but I hope that you still hold your oath of office tantamount to everything else, because without that, we won't have anything else. Why are so many of us killing innocents all around the world? Because of the orders of some superior officer. Our conscience is seared so badly that to keep us functioning, number one, because of so many tours and long hours, but number two, because a lot of us start questioning, our conscience starts bothering us. We start questioning what we're doing. So they load us up on drugs. Do you realize that we lose more of us from suicide than we do from combat casualties? That's never happened before. So there's this tug of war in our hearts saying, gee, I want to serve liberty and freedom, but what's going on around me? Why do I feel this way? It's because it's not true. That's not what we're doing. We need to abide by our oath of office. Well, I can get verbose, as you all know. Yes, I am concerned for the country. This is the gravest time we've ever seen because there is a spiritual force at work now unlike it's ever been in the past. And it has to do with the Bohemian Grove. Go look it up. Go watch this thing on YouTube. And realize that your leaders attend those things, or they take orders from the people that attend those things, or they sympathize with those people. Go look at it and ask yourself if you really want a part of that. If you decide to stay in the military, fine, but stand up for what's right, even if it isn't convenient for yourself. And the same would really go for police officers out there. All right? Too long today. I apologize for the short break there, but sometimes it's better I do that than I try to keep going, because these things are heartfelt to me.